We are about to have another round of lockdowns amid what many have already pointed out as a very, very dark winter. The number of confirmed viral cases continues to climb. Hospitals are crowded, people are afraid, and the state of our economy is oscillating between being very bad and rolling to the edge of a cliff. So far, national and global leaders' responses to the crisis doesn't appear to have effectively helped to control the number of virus cases. Until this point, case numbers have only continued to grow, sometimes at a slower speed, but saying that the numbers fell or retracted is a little bit of a misstatement. In fact, we have already presented studies showing that in countries where strict measures to bend the curve were adopted as opposed to countries that opted for more flexible measures, similar rates in the number of cases, recoveries, and casualties were observed. What we're trying to elucidate is that the idea of lockdowns might seem like a viable solution to protect people from contagion, but its effectiveness is being questioned by scientists and data analysts who've been arguing that numbers were not significantly different. A country that is educated on health security measures sees far more results in confirmed case rates than a country that chooses to close its economy. At the end of the day, the side effects of widespread lockdowns only add to people's suffering. It all starts with the massive spread of fear. The mainstream media takes advantage of every possible loophole to explore this narrative and manipulate people to overreact to this situation. We are not diminishing the seriousness of the facts, but when, in human history, leaving people locked up at home while being constantly fed with fear of the outside world has ever been a reasonable answer to a crisis? Of course, some will benefit from this sense of dread, but rest assured it won't be us. In our channel, we've already talked about the effects of the current crisis on the financial markets, the stock markets, the real estate market, and the overall economy. But today, we are engaging in a discussion about the human toll. We wanted to discuss the effects of the 2020 events on our everyday lives, because ultimately, that's what matters the most. If you're a subscriber to our channel by now, you must have already realized that today's video is a little different than usual. Usually, we present the insight of experts and specialists on the most distinct subjects of the global and U.S. economic outlook, intending to bring alternative points of view to the surface, many of which cannot be found on mainstream media outlets. That's why we try to make unconventional assessments accessible to our viewers, widening the perception about the latest events and the intentions lying behind the covers. Today, Epic Economist is going to do an epic analysis. We want to disclose how the effects of the crisis are driving millions to complete desperation. And yes, as always, there is a very obscure reason behind it. Therefore, we ask your support to help messages like this reach many other people by leaving a thumbs up in this video, sharing it with friends, and please subscribe to our channel to help our community grow. Given that we can't really count on those we call leaders to really lead us out of this crisis, the least we can do is try to understand it so we don't let ourselves be consumed by it. The truth is that by taking advantage of the public's commotion regarding such sudden and disastrous events experienced throughout this year, the elites continue to feed this catastrophe in order to make many of us hitting our breaking points. Soon enough, millions will be unemployed, helpless, hungry, and homeless in a state of complete despair. It's only when people have no more prospects for improvement in their lives, when all their force, their growth opportunities, their comfortable lifestyles have been removed from their reach, and they have nothing left but terror and misery. Then Real intentions of global leaders, politicians, globalists, and all the marionettes of the establishment emerge and find the perfect cue to infiltrate in our lives. Fear is only the first step of their plan. Needless to say that it has been effectively installed into millions of heads across the globe. Can we even judge them? Life wasn't easy before this crisis came along. Of course, it sped up the economic deterioration that was set to happen over several years, but many were coping with their own issues before this year had even begun. Some could have thought that 2020 was going to be a fresh start, and then they've seen their lives inevitably collapse. So being triggered by fear was an unfortunate but natural reaction. After all, we're only humans. If we want to be in this together, it's important to have empathy towards a neighbor that can't see past their own perspectives. We don't have to change it, we just need to respect it. Because considering all we've reported so far, we've all been suffering to a certain extent this year. Unless, of course, you're part of the 1%. And if you are, and by the irony of fate, you happen to be watching this video, we just have to ask one simple question for you. Why? It's just sad to assume that all of this destruction is being caused in the name of money and power. It is for the sake of more control over virtual, intangible conventions that they make us forget that every number in those rates represents an actual human being. It has become so common to say millions, tens of millions, that we've lost our ability to measure how deep this wound goes. The result of this spoon-fed panic is what states use to justify imposing strict lockdowns. They say all they want is to control the propagation of the virus. But why not do that through the use of efficient health safety instructions to workers? Is it just easier to shut down everything and lock everyone up? We have experienced the harsh collateral damage brought by business shutdowns before. Why repeat it in the same manner once again? In every wave of shutdowns, those businesses that have been hanging by a thread are forced to face their own downfall, while the ones who manage to stay afloat see their survival compromised. Small business owners have been particularly hit hard by the crisis. When business activity is suddenly frozen, how are these business owners supposed to find ways to have enough revenue to pay for their staff, their rent, their operational costs? They simply don't. If it wasn't clear before, now it's pretty evident that this is the ultimate opportunity for big conglomerates to watch small business meltdown and go bankrupt, so that they can swallow them up through bailouts, oftentimes to a fraction of their actual value. Then they incorporate these earnings while also annihilating the competition. Federal governments all over the world are complacent. Don't you ever let yourself be convinced otherwise. For that reason, the warnings of economists, experts, strategists, scholars are outlining explicit signs that this whole collapse has been made by design. The ones who absorb the impact of this chaotic freefall are us. 70 million unemployment claims were filed this year. 70 million. Our citizens saw their stable lifestyles turn upside down. Many of them have never received the help of federal programs or non-profit organizations ever before, and now they have to rely on assistance to have enough to eat. According to Feeding America, 54 million people could go hungry by early next year. Can I repeat that? 54 million people could go hungry by early next year. Food banks have witnessed a historic spike in demand. In some states, it was registered an increase 8 times larger than any other period in history. Our children are being severely affected by food insecurity. For every adult facing hunger, there are 4 food-insecure children. That's to say, The future of an entire generation is being put into jeopardy because kids without an adequate nourishing diet are more likely to develop cognitive issues and drop out of school in their early teens. On the other hand, with the memory of food shortages still fresh on their minds and moved by the anxiety of further supply chain disruptions, some have been wiping out store shelves in a phenomenon whose name couldn't be more appropriate: panic purchasing. Targeting to stockpile essentials for this dark winter ahead, thousands have been rushing into stores and massively buying canned foods, cleaning products, a wide range of other products, unconsciously creating the very shortage they were fearing in the first place. Largely benefiting from this sudden hoarding behavior, major food retailers are readjusting prices for the growing demand. If you think the offer of these products is diminishing due to the natural disasters that occurred over the year or the limited conditions of labor in food plants due to health crisis-related restrictions, you're not entirely mistaken, but there's a lot more to it. Leading food manufacturers are forcing local farmers to dump their milk, to slaughter their animals and burn their crops, with the purpose of maintaining the image that at any moment the supply chain can break and that people have to be indeed prepared for shortages, knowing that they can soar prices by holding back inventory for a while. Hey, why wouldn't they do it? Additionally, with the coming of new lockdowns, it was obvious that consumers would want to ensure enough supplies to be protected during what's going to be a tough winter. For instance, last week, a local report described that in New Mexico, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has put immense pressure on businesses with her abrupt lockdown order, forcing non-essential businesses to close and creating what has been dubbed modern breadlines, with people waiting 2 to 4 hours to enter essential retailers. In any case, these are the people who somehow can still afford food. At this stage in the crisis, millions cannot. If they can't pay for their own food, how are they supposed to afford rent? Now, let's backtrack a little bit. Lockdowns shuts down the economic activity, leading business to go bankrupt or close permanently, sparking huge waves of layoffs, which consequently drives a large chunk of such jobless workers into poverty. Without the very convenient, for the elites of course, expiration of federal assistance, those people have no source of income, thereby in deep food and housing insecurity. 40 million are on the brink of eviction. 40 million. In the world's wealthiest superpower, 40 million can become homeless over the coming months. It's as absurd as it is odd. They say we must stay at home. In some states, citizens were impeded to congregate with family on Thanksgiving, and there's a looming threat of greater law enforcement to those who don't comply with these strict measures, risking to face fines or even be arrested. Meanwhile, 40 million can lose their homes, and no one is doing anything to prevent this from happening. Do you see the ambiguity in here? This alarming economic suffering is a weapon in deviant hands. As Michael Snyder highlighted in his latest article, when people become desperate enough, those in power can get most of them to do just about anything. It has been said that if you want people to be willing to accept a solution, first you have to make them realize that they have a problem. Now another wave of lockdowns is being instituted, not just in the USA, but all over the planet, and this is going to perfectly set the stage for the so-called solutions that the elite plan to offer all of us in 2021. And once this dark winter finally ends, almost everybody will be absolutely desperate to return to their normal lives. So, if you're wondering where this tortuous road will take us, Maybe you should check one of our previous Great Reset videos, which exposed the elite's dystopian quest for infinite money and how they are willing to push us over the edge to get what they want. When we say things are about to get worse, it's because by now we can see that this is just the beginning. A reminder that you're watching the Epic Economist channel. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and please subscribe to our channel to keep updated with future videos. Thank you.